There's a very strong feeling around Leicester City at the moment that this season, the Championship 25-26, is going to be a lot harder than the last when they won the title reasonably comfortably under Enzo Maresca, or the high points bar combined with strong competition from the likes of Ipswich, Leeds, and Southampton meant that they had to limber over the line a little bit with not great form at the back end. But they were very comfortable last time out, and I think the feeling is that they evaded certain restrictions, certain punishments from the EFL last time around. They might not be as lucky to avoid this time around. While there's also criticism levelled at top Iowad, who I think there's a lot of sympathy for because of the obvious circumstance in which he came to be Leicester City chairman. But there's also a question mark, I think, about how suitable he is for this kind of leadership role, somebody who has to approve any major decision that Leicester City make. And he's sort of deferred a lot of responsibility to John Rudkin, the director of football, who's been heavily criticised as well. And so with questionable recruitment at the King Power over the last 3 years, Leicester City fans are asking the big questions. However, they do still have 9 of the starting 11, the main starting 11 that won the Championship title 2 years ago. They do have some really exciting talent coming through the academy, namely Yeremy Monga. And they also do have Marti CIfuentes as manager, who showed great appointment in the last, great adaptability at QPR in the last 18 months. So is this a situation where the problems at Leicester City that have built up over the last few years following the decay even of a really good Brendan Rodgers side are going to really come home to roost? Or are Leicester City going to remind everyone that they've still got a pretty good Championship squad and end up being up there? But there's also the possibility of a point deduction. So what can we expect from Leicester City this season? That's what we're here to discuss on this Summer Deep Dive. So before we get started, if you like what we do here, I'm speaking to a fan of each of the 72 clubs across the EFL this summer. So if you like what we do here, you can do us a massive favour by getting subscribed to us at EFL Debate on YouTube and on Spotify. Delighted to be joined by Lox from the Leicester City podcast, Blue Tinted Glasses. Lox, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate your time this afternoon. What's your feeling about where Leicester City are as a club at the moment? And does that question fill you with dread, as most Leicester fans I seem to speak to?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think a lot of Leicester fans, are really uncertain as to what the future holds. I think, if you asked me a month ago, I would have given you a very negative answer. With the relegation, a lack of movement on the manager front as well, lack of recruitment, potential points deductions. I mean, there's not much positive there. But I think now Leicester fans are slightly more confident just with the recent appointment of Marti CIfuentes. I think a lot of Leicester fans are happy with that appointment. They think it's the right choice. We've seen Leicester City take a bit of a scattergun approach to managers. It started kind of quite consistent with Claude Puel, if you remember back to that, Brendan Rodgers, and we had a bit of a stopgap in Dean Smith to try and keep us in the Premier League 2 years ago. And then we went to Enzo Maresca, which was, a great time in the Championship in the 23-24 season. When we were promoted, though, when Enzo Maresca left, you can feel sympathy, because I think a promoted Premier League club should never expect their manager to get poached by Chelsea. But I think the replacement that they brought in was rather frustrating, I think, for a lot of Leicester fans. Look, under no illusions that the job at the time wasn't the most attractive. We were, looking at a potential points deduction then as well. So the people that would have come in obviously is limited, but I think we would have much rathered a more modern, progressive style of manager. Even if it's a hidden gem, even if it's somebody that nobody's heard of, we would have preferred that to Steve Cooper. Of course, there's the Nottingham Forest link, but we just didn't really think he would be the right fit. So this time round,
we had Martin O'Neill as manager, who was one of your most popular managers of the modern era, and he won the European Cup with Nottingham Forest.
Exactly, that's true. Personally, from my point of view, I can only talk from my point of view. I didn't care too much about the Nottingham Forest link with Cooper. I just didn't think it was the right fit. And I think we're glad to see the board, John Rudkin, Top, whoever's made the decision to go down the route of Marti CIfuentes. We still feel, Leicester fans, even though we are quite negative at the moment, we still feel that we've got a squad currently, even if we lose one or two names, that is more than capable of playing that brand of football in the Championship and winning a lot of games. And that's how I feel. The problem, though, mate, where, as you can imagine, the majority of the uncertainty is coming from is the authorities. You know, what punishment is going to be put on Leicester City? Football is just played off the pitch, in my opinion, a lot these days. And you know, of course, Leicester haven't helped themselves. We all know this. Leicester aren't scot-free in all of this, but it is very, it's very worrying that we're going to go into what we're less than 2-3 weeks away from the season starting, and we don't even know what points. You know, we could be starting on -12, we could be on 0, but get a -12 in 6 months' time. We don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. So talk to me about Top then, Locks, because I think initially there was a real bond between him and Leicester City fans for obvious reasons, because the sort of tragic circumstances around him. Initially, I remember when he was celebrating with the players the FA Cup win over Manchester City in 2021, and actually a lot of people envied Leicester City, and you looked at as the model club that recruited really well and had that sort of smooth recruitment and everything, and a good manager in Brendan Rodgers. And in the last 4 years, a lot of that seems to have been eroded for, I guess, bad decision making and letting players run out their contracts and offering the contracts to the wrong players, and lots of bad decision making that Top has to some extent enabled, I suppose.
Yeah, look, I think he is the son of Vishai, who he made the impossible possible, as he said, as we say, and of course there was a grace period where he couldn't do anything wrong. Of course we were still successful for a few years after he took over. We moved into a 100 million pound training ground that is considered one of the best in the world, really. We won the FA Cup, we won the Community Shield, we finished 5th twice, we made a European semi-final. I think the dominoes started to fall when there was a change in strategy at the club to back Brendan Rodgers more than anybody had been backed under this ownership. And that was, we made a decision to not sell a big asset for one summer, right? So Leicester City have always...
Is it Tillerman's, Locks?
So this was the 22, 23. No, that was the 21-22 season. The 21-22 season. There was interest in Tielemans. There was interest in a few other players. Brendan Rodgers, at the end of the day, as expected, after finishing 5th, wanted to keep the squad together completely, and he wanted to add to it. We brought in the likes of Patson Daka, Bouba Samari for relatively big money, and I think at the time they were considered big talents. People expected them to go on and be great things. So at the time it seemed like a good decision, but we then went and finished eighth in the league, which I think was right on the budget, but they wanted obviously top 4. That's what they were recruiting for. They wanted to make that step up to get Champions League football. And I think that one summer where we didn't sell a talent, where when all of the seasons previously we had, I think that's when we started to kind of fall behind on the whole PSR stuff. And once you make that mistake, it's hard to come back from it. And then the likes of Yuri Tielemans walks away on a free, having been bought for 40 million a few years before. Of course the relegation is the one though. That is what has caused all of these problems. We had the 8th highest paid squad in the Premier League, and we got relegated. That is a catastrophic failure. And I think that's where we're still at. We're still trying to recover from that, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. So with that in mind, some of the responsibility, I guess, is held at Top's door in the sense of enabling some of these bad decisions. But I guess the one who's really been making them has been John Rudkin as director of football. Now, he's been there for 12 years, but he's not once spoken to the fans or been public facing. And there is something that feels to me slightly off about that. That you would think that if you're a director of football, you'd want them to be accountable and do the fans forums and speak to fans and do it, an interview once every few months and that kind of thing.
Yeah, sorry, I just realised as well I didn't directly answer your question with regards to top,
Right.
but I'll include it here. I mean, this isn't just Leicester are losing, so everybody kicks off. This is something that even when we won the championship 2 years ago, Leicester fans were holding up signs about Rudkin out and towards the board. And initially, all of that criticism did go towards John Rudkin for some of the decisions that were made. I mean, we signed, just looking back, Ryan Bertrand and Yannick Vestergaard 6 months after we beat them 9-0. I mean, that's a bit of a crazy decision to make.
Yeah.
And we regretted those signings. So John Rudkin, I don't know if you know the history of him, but he's had a long history at the football club. He started as a volunteer with the academy, and he kind of worked his way up. And it almost feels like there's a real lack of footballing nous at the football club. The scouting department we once had that brought the likes of Riyad Mahrez, N'Golo Kante, James Maddison, and the rest of them, that is no longer in place. That was kind of ripped apart under Brendan Rodgers, and now it feels like the major decisions are being made by two people who don't really, to put it kindly, have a clue. If I'm honest, I mean, when you've got a director of football who makes this number of mistakes, eventually the criticism goes towards his boss, the owner of the football club, the only person who has the power to remove this guy, to replace this guy, and that is Top. And that is why now I think a lot of the attention has been put on him. And it's really, really encouraging, I think, to see people like yourself, mainstream journalists as well, talking about the Leicester ownership, because for a while Leicester fans got the label entitled. Oh, look what you've done, look what you've achieved.
Yeah.
And it is frustrating because we're not the club we were 10 years ago. We're not the club we were 5 years ago. So now at the moment, I think
it's
there's a lot of
slightly
pressure.
insulting Leicester City fans' intelligence that people think that you couldn't understand the idea that you wouldn't be, winning the title or winning the FA Cup every year. Like, for people who have supported Leicester City since God knows how long, to think that you'd all of a sudden expect it to be the case every year. I don't think that's the case. I think it's just a bit more transparency and accountability and some of those basic values that you're looking for.
Totally agree, mate. I read your article recently, earlier on today, about Rudkin and Top you mentioned, and it does feel, I think something you said is a part of its loyalty, which of course is. John Rudkin was very close to Vishai and Top, and I think when Vishai passed away
together as well, and I think there's probably, I'm sure that counts for something.
And Top was early 20s when he came to Leicester, right? So John Rudkin's probably a father figure in a sense as well to him. So of course it would probably pain him to get rid of John Rudkin. But at the end of the day, at this point, I think loyalty and sentiment is being put above Leicester's best interests. There's a lot of people and even players who have left the club in the last couple of years have not outright said it, but referenced there are problems behind the scenes at Leicester at the top.
Anyone in particular?
Well, there were comments the other day from Daniel Everson, who went to Preston North End this summer, the goalkeeper. He didn't outright say who, but he mentioned there are problems behind the scenes at Leicester. It's a bit chaotic at the top. Right. And allegedly, the director of football, John Rudkin, and the CEO, Susan Whelan, they're not on talking terms anymore. So it seems like chaos. And the frustrating thing is, how do you have 2 relegations in 3 years? How do you fumble being not just a stable Premier League club, a stable European club? How do you fumble that so bad and no changes are made? It makes no sense to me.
Yeah, 100%. So kind of moving it forward, you've appointed Marti CIfuentes, and one thing that I quite like about him, Locks, that he's shown at QPR is while he does have a stylistic vision that he wants to move towards, he's also been very good at adapting to things in season and knowing when to make changes. And I think that could stand him in good stead. So, is there some encouragement around the Leicester City fan base around that appointment?
Yeah, 100%, mate. I mean, I don't know if you remember, but when Enzo Maresca was at the club, there was actually, believe it or not, despite winning the league, there was a divide because a lot of fans didn't enjoy watching, and it was, I think, more the older fans. They didn't enjoy the football. They thought it was boring.
It's not for everyone, is it? The playing out from the back thing.
Exactly, and I think this time around, Marti CIfuentes, from what we've heard of him, from the research, that I've done personally, and also already from the first preseason game that he's had, albeit against a weak opposition, I think it's something that more Leicester fans, the majority of Leicester fans, will get on board with. Even in his first interview with the club, he spoke about, like you just said, he does have a philosophy in a sense. He has a way that he wants his team to play, but he can adapt. I think one thing that stood out from his most recent interview was where he said, "We want the ball to attack. That's why we want the ball. We want the ball to attack the game." Whereas Enzo Maresca was very much, we want the ball to control the game. And there is a difference there. It doesn't sound like there's a difference, but there is a difference. And yeah, already, I mean, we've recently done a tactical breakdown of that first preseason game, and it's exciting seeing what already in a week he's got the players doing. He seems like he's getting his ideas across already. And look, say what you want about Leicester's squad, not Premier League, quality and all of this, but at the Championship, we have got some great players at this level. I mean, you saw Steffi Mavididi 2 years ago.
Oh, it was brilliant. Championship.
If it wasn't for Somerville, best winger in the league probably that season. Sure. So it's exciting that these players are still at the club. Abdul Fattawi, who's off the back of an ACL as well. Marti CIfuentes must be looking at this squad and thinking, I can do something special here. And with due respect, compare it to the QPR squad. Our squad just is superior. So I think he'll be very happy with the tools that he's got at his disposal.
Absolutely. So if we have a little look at the squad then, Locks, you've got Mads Hermansen in goal. Do you expect you'll retain him for the Championship?
I don't. No, I think he will be gone. Yeah, it's looking that way. I mean, Chelsea came sniffing last summer when Enzo Maresca left, and apparently we valued him at 40 million. Now, I don't think we're going to get that. Yeah, I don't think we're going to get that. There are rumours now circulating in the last 24 hours that West Ham are looking around 25-30 million. But to be honest with you, we have a backup who was backup, Jakub Stolarczyk. He's now been given the number 1 shirt. And I think he will be the starting goalkeeper for Leicester City this season. It does look like that Hermansen will be on his way out. And I don't blame him. He's a great goalkeeper. I actually thought he'd be going somewhere better than West Ham. Maybe he still will. But he's got a bright future. But Jakub Stolarczyk is a great replacement in between the sticks.
Yeah, well, hopefully a big season for Stolarczyk. So in terms of the right-back spot, what I thought Ricardo Pereira did really well in the title-winning season, Locks, was that inverted fullback role where he kind of is a team sheet right-back but kind of moved into midfield. I guess he'll operate more as I imagine he might operate more as a traditional right-back under Marti CIfuentes.
Yeah, I mean, of course, we can only go from the first preseason game so far, where we had 2 different 11s for the first half and second half under Marti. But he was operating in, I wouldn't call it a traditional fullback role. I also wouldn't call it an inverted wing back role either. It was very fluid. He was finding himself in all sorts of different positions when he came on in the second half. Hamza Chowdhury as well did the same in the first half. You were seeing him in the pivot. You were seeing him as a number 10. You were seeing him as a winger. It was an extremely fluid position that Marti played both Ricardo and Hamza in. So that is one to watch, I think, this season. I think Ricardo is, some people laugh when I say this, but he is one of the most technically gifted players in the squad currently. He's incredible.
Played for Portugal, hasn't he?
Yeah, of course. And before his ACL injury in 2019, I think he was top 3 fullbacks in Europe at one stage. So that's the problem, though, mate. The injuries. He somehow got through a whole season under Enzo Maresca with barely any injuries. I think he was maybe missed 1 or 2 games. Last season, he was out for like 4 or 5 months. So if we can keep him fit, he will be one of the best players in the Championship this season, in my opinion.
Let's hope that's the case. In terms of central defence, Wout Faes was obviously part of the Championship title-winning squad, but from what I can gather, he struggled quite significantly in the Premier League last season. Is he going to struggle for his place this year?
I think if he stayed, he would play. To be honest, I mean, we saw what he did in the Championship, but I think it is. I think a lot of Leicester fans are hopeful he does leave. With all due respect, he's an arrogant guy. Sometimes that's good, right? Sometimes you want that in a player. I think when you perform how he has done in the Premier League, I think maybe it's not the best best of ways to conduct yourself, but. He was linked with a move to Italy in January, and there were reports coming out from Sky, I think it was, that he was looking to leave this summer and that Leicester would let that happen. So I think the problem more is who wants him, who wants to take him. You've got to remember a big problem with Leicester players at the moment, maybe a bit of the more of the dead wood, is they're on inflated wages. That they get paid a lot of money, and what club wants to take that on? Are these players willing to take a cut to move on? If they are, then that's great. I mean, I think we're seeing a problem with a player I'm sure you're about to move on to, Connor Cody. He was meant to go to Rangers. We thought it'd be done by now, but there seems to be a stumbling block with his wages. So if Wout Faes leaves, I don't think there's a single Leicester fan that would be, unhappy with that, to be honest with you. But if he stays, of course, he'll be one of the best defenders in the Championship, I think, like he was 2 years ago. He's a Belgian international at the end of the day.
True, yeah. So remind me how your other sort of centre-back options are looking. You've still got Vestergaard there, haven't you?
Yeah, Vestergaard was given a 3-year deal last year off the back of Enzo Maresca's recommendation, and then he left about 2 weeks later. So that's great. He's fallen out with three out of 4 managers that he's had at Leicester City. Look, he's probably the best centre back at the club with the ball in terms of ball playing and all of that. But there's a clear issue off the pitch. There has been a few moments over the last couple of years where he's fallen out with managers and stuff like that. But again, just like Fast 2 years ago in the Championship, he was one of the best centre backs in the league. The others are more exciting. The others are the players that Leicester fans want to see. So first of all, it's Caleb Okoli. There's still uncertainty whether he'll be here because I think he's probably the most sellable asset out of the defenders at the moment. He's on the cusp of the Italy squad. He's more of a modern day centre back. He's quicker. He's decent with the ball. He's a bit of a powerhouse as well. I would expect him to leave, but if he stays, I think he's a guaranteed starter.
He could be one of the best defenders in the division then, if he's got all those attributes.
I would go as far as saying I think he will be the best if he stayed, to be honest. Right. I think he's much better than Wout Faes, for example. Much better. The other one is Ben Nelson, which I'm sure you're aware of.
Had loan at Oxford, didn't he? Second half of last season.
We are excited about this guy. Yeah, young, he's quick, he's tall, he's physical, he's good on the ball. He's also being looked at by Chelsea, apparently. Oxford fans were raving about him. He of course, picked up a bit of an injury last season, so he didn't get to play the full year with Oxford. But he's a player that we're super excited about, an academy lad. If I think he'll stay. I can't imagine a big team takes a punt on him just yet. Maybe 1 year with Leicester, another year with Leicester in the Championship. But I expect him to start again majority of the games. If it was up to me, mate, the 2 starting centre backs this season would be Caleb Okoli and Ben Nelson. That would be my pick, and I think a lot of Leicester fans would say the same.
Makes a lot of sense then. James Justin then, Locks. He's one who's he's actually right-footed, but he seems to have made more of a career of himself as a left back, which is a bit unusual, isn't it?
Yes, yeah. I think it's his best position at left back. I mean, he played on the left quite a lot under Brendan Rodgers because Ricardo was on the other side. Very good getting forwards. He struggled last season in the first half under Cooper. The system that we played under Steve Cooper left James Justin incredibly exposed. He had to play basically every game because we picked up injuries to other fullbacks. The second half of the season under Ruud van Nistelrooy, despite us getting worse, his performance has improved in my opinion. I think going forwards, he's very good. I don't know if you saw Jamie Vardy's last ever goal, but what a run that was from James Justin against Ipswich. Picked it up from his own half, took it into basically the penalty area and played Vardy in. I would be sad to see JJ go, to be honest with you. I think some fans are saying that maybe it's time to move him on, which I can understand that. He's only got 1 year left on his deal, so there's a decision to be made there by the club.
And also, given the mistakes that you've made previously of letting players run out their contracts and not selling players, you've got to be mindful of that as well, I guess.
If he's willing to take a new deal on no more than what he's already earning, I would probably slap your hand off with that. The thing is, people talk about experience in a squad, and James Justin's the type of experience that I like. I'm not overly fussed on these 33-year-old journeymen who come into a squad and bring the experience. I much prefer a James Justin type character who's been in and around the club now for, I don't know, 6 years. About 6 years now. He's seen a lot of different teams. He's seen a lot of different managers. He appears to really enjoy his time at the club, and that I think he's an important part of that squad. Even if he doesn't play as much, I still think he probably will play quite a bit. But I would love to keep him around.
Yeah, well, let's hope James Justin can find that form and fitness then. I guess if we look into central midfield, one player I did really want to ask you about, Locks, was Ollie Skipp, because for me, covering the EFL, the Championship, he was unbelievable for Norwich City, one of their best players in the 2021 season. And since then, he might have had a little bit of joy at Spurs, but I'm surprised, sort of looking at the numbers from last season. He only started something like 10 Premier League games and was often used as a substitute. So I'm wondering, he's somebody that I would say at Championship level, I think he can be one of the best players in the division.
Well, we talk about poor decisions. He cost £20 million. We paid Spurs £20 million for Oliver Skipp, and he started 10 games. That tells you all you need to know. I mean, I was hopeful when he came in, especially because at the time, I think, and still now, we thought Wilfred Ndidi's time at the club is almost over. It looks like he's going to be leaving as well this summer, but Oliver Skipp, I thought, would come in and play, a lot of football for us. It wasn't to be, and I will say, mate, the performances were not good at all. When he did play, Oliver Skipp, it was pretty poor. I think there was a game against Newcastle we played where it was him and Hamza Chowdhury. I think the stat was in 90 minutes they didn't put a tackle in. 0 tackles for 2 defensive midfielders.
I'm so surprised about that, because when he played for Norwich City, he was unbelievable for them, and that was one of his strengths, that he was putting challenges in and giving them that sort of aggressive edge. So I'm really surprised that it's gone that way for Ollie Skipp. I'm not quite sure. I'm a bit mystified by that, to be honest.
I'm surprised as well, because I was quite keen on the guy from what I'd seen previously. Now, when you drop down to the Championship, there's a drop in quality, of course, in the division, and I think now is Oliver Skipp's time to kind of to claim his spot in the team. Now, in the opening 10 days of Marti CIfuentes' time at the club, a lot of media that's been out on social media, and also from the game that we played under him on Saturday, he seems to be very hands-on with Oliver Skipp. He seems to be getting into Skipp quite a bit. Now, I think that's the wise thing to do, considering you spent £20 million on the guy. You need to try and and get the best out of him. And I think that's what will be done. As I said, with Wilfred and Ndidi looking likely to leave, I think Oliver Skipp will play a lot of football this season, and rightly so. And if you look at his time at Norwich, a few years ago, you would say that he is more than capable of playing at championship level. So it is exciting. It could almost be a new signing type of feel, right? A fresh start under a new manager in a different league. Similarly to what happened with the likes of Fass and Vestergaard 2 years ago, you've got a player here whose performances in the Premier League weren't good at all, but now he can have this fresh start and hopefully perform.
Well, let's hope so. You've also got Harry Winks, who was a real mainstay in that title-winning squad in 23-24. How did he find the step up to the Premier League? Challenging, I imagine, as many did.
Yeah, he struggled as well. He wasn't one of the worst performers, to be honest with you. He was pretty steady. The type of player he is, I think he struggled a little bit with the pace when we took that step back up. Under Enzo Maresca in the Championship, of course, he had that. He was basically the quarterback, right? He was, spraying passes left and right, had the ball a lot, and it was relatively easy for him. And I expect it will be the same again this season in the Championship. Harry Winks had a fallout last season with Ruud van Nistelrooy. The Telegraph reported that he was asked, he lives in London, and he was asked to come and stay at the club's training ground one night a week for a double session the day after or the day before. He refused, and he was exiled from the squad for the last 2 months of the season.
I think that's really poor management, to not see people's personal lives as important. I think you want people to feel valued as people and not just as, robots, if you like.
His partner had just given birth as well, to make
things worse. It's just like you've got to take those kind of things into consideration, I think.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's also important to remember that this wasn't an issue under Enzo Maresca, who signed him, right? It was, I think there was Connor Cody, there was Harry Winks, those two in particular. Cody's in Liverpool, Winks is in London. The commuting was fine for another manager, but it wasn't for this manager, Ruud van Nistelrooy. And Leicester City being in the Midlands, we've always had players who have done this. Kasper Schmeichel lived in Manchester. He had to commute every day. There's not, there were quite a few players in history for Leicester that...
Do you know what it is, Locke? I think it's treating people like adults. It's like giving them the respect and saying, I trust you to make the right decisions for yourself, for your family, and for us. And also, like, if you're happy in your family and personal life and you're able to look after your partner, that's going to massively improve your performance on the pitch. So it's just common sense for me. It really is.
And there was similarly, there was in the same article from the Telegraph, they did say that don't expect to see Harry Winks at Leicester if Ruud van Nistelrooy is the manager going forwards. And now we know, Ruud isn't here. I think he'll have a fresh start as well. As we know, look, Harry Winks, the problem with Winks as well, by the way, another one with 1 year left. We have a few that have 1 year left on their deal. Now, personally, I don't think we're going to get him.
I'd love to hear the rest of that, but just to stop you on that one.
Yeah.
Then you're coming to a kind of a crossroads point where you could come back up next season and maybe retain some of those players. But then if it goes badly next season, it's going to be a massive rebuild next summer.
But yeah, bang on. But I think it's not like a Yuri Tielemans situation with some of these players that we're going to be heartbroken if they don't sign on. I think a lot of Leicester fans, if you went through a lot of these players that have got a year left, I think a lot of Leicester fans would say, it's fine, let them go. We're not really going to miss them too much.
Sure.
There's a couple of exceptions to that, of course. I mean, if we got promoted this year, then of course, naturally, there's going to be a few of these players that do want to sign on, because they'll be playing in the Premier League again. They'll be back on their full wage. For context, Leicester players take a 30% cut when they get relegated. So there's going to be Wilfred Ndidi contract was running out. He didn't sign. When we got promoted, he signs an extension, right? That's what happened last summer. So it would be similar to that. But I think the wise thing from Leicester, that they have to take a bit of a a bit of a savage approach and say to some of these players, you're not staying, you're not signing any deal. We were too
or a Martí approach.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say we were too generous with Yannick Vestergaard. We gave him a 3-year deal. We knew what he was like in the Premier League for Leicester previously. We got promoted and we gave him a 3-year deal. He's going to be here now, I think, for those 3 years, unless somebody's willing to pay his wages. So we've got to be clever with that. And over the last few years we haven't been, and that's a big concern. Again, going back to John Rudkin, he's the one who makes these decisions.
Yeah, absolutely. So how is the midfield shaping up then? Because you've got Harry Winks there. You've got a bit of a question mark from what you're saying about Ollie Skipp. Just sort of refresh my memory about, is Samari still there?
He's still here. Yeah, okay. For now.
Right, okay.
Honestly, I don't know what this midfield's going to look like. I don't, because we've got players that, Samari, for example, he didn't want to be here when we got relegated last time. He went on loan to Sevilla, and in one of these loans with option to buy, where the Spanish club never actually activate the option. Of course, when we were promoted again, Premier League football, of course, he's happy to play, but his performances were hit and miss. There's a player there. He's one of these players. He's so frustrating. There is a player and a half in there. It's just we don't see it enough. In the Championship, if he stayed,
he gets the head right.
I dread to think, he's going to do some damage. I'm sorry to some of the teams in this division. I just don't think he will stay. I think, there's very mild interest from teams across Europe that would be willing to bring him in. I'm sure we would let him go on a decent price, a cut price deal. But at the moment, I think the most likely midfield would probably be Harry Winks, Oliver Skipp, and then the number 10, which at this point could be anyone, because Bilal El Khanous, who knows what's going to happen with him. There's a lot of clubs interested. Nottingham Forest are looking at him. There's a couple clubs across. I think Monaco are looking at him as well. Arsenal at one point were sniffing around. I think that's gone quiet. But Will Alves, who obviously was on loan at Cardiff last season, for the last bit of the season.
He's a youth international, isn't he, Will Alves?
Yeah, and he's been at the club. I mean, he made his debut in the FA Cup under Brendan Rodgers at 17 years old, I think. He struggled with injury, though. He had an ACL, which kind of halted his progress a little bit, but he's featured in pre-season. I think he's one the club will keep around, this season for, at least a squad player. But he impressed the other day. He came on actually in the second half in the pre-season friendly, and he operated really nicely in that number 10 position. So there's another one as well, yeah.
So in terms of the wide options, I mean, we've got to start really with Steffi Mavididi. We mentioned how good he was in the Championship. Do you think there's this extent to which Locks in the Championship, because of his sheer athleticism, it was too much an ability to run at defenders and the threat that he posed that way, as well as some cultured finishes, that was a lot for opposing defences to handle. Whereas at Premier League level, everyone's very athletic, so it's maybe less of an advantage for him, and maybe you find that a bit difficult.
I think he's the epitome. Some Leicester fans will say this is quite harsh, what I'm about to say, but I actually think Steffi Mavididi is the epitome of the too good for the Championship, not good enough for the Premier League. That's how I see him. I could be wrong, and he could prove me wrong in the future, either with Leicester in the Premier League or another team. But I think at this level, as I said earlier, with if Somerville wasn't in the division, I think Mavididi probably would have gone down as the best winger in the league that year. I think he was absolutely incredible under Enzo Maresca. The link up with Dewsbury Hall on that left side, won us many of games, and the wide options in general at Leicester. This is the most exciting part of our squad. In my opinion, it's exciting, and I'm going to say something controversial here, and people will. I'm sure there'll be Championship fans out there that disagree. I think we've got the best wide options in the league. I really do. With the Mavididi and Abdul Fatawu. I mean, just incredible. The younger options as well. Jeremy Monga. I mean, this guy is something else. He is something else.
Featuring in the Premier League at 16 years of age is
15.
15. Jesus Christ.
Yeah. His debut was at 15. He's now 16, but his debut was 15.
I mean, do you think that there's an outside possibility where Monga could end up featuring quite a lot from the bench next season and end up being a bit of a wild card?
I think there's a good chance he starts a lot of games.
Ooh,
honestly.
wow.
Now,
oh my God.
I did this guy, mate. Honestly, he is for the last 12 months. So 12 months ago, the average Leicester fan hadn't heard of him. Okay,
Sure.
but there was talk around the club that this guy was going to be the best product to ever come out of Leicester City. And if you include the likes of Kiernan Dewsbury, Harvey Barnes, Ben Chilwell, Gary Lin, Heskey, there was talk, a year ago that this guy is going to be the best of them all. And if I'm honest, from what I've seen of him so far, it's hard to disagree. I mean, in pre-season, he's been our best player. He's been our best player in pre-season. I implore you, once we've finished here, mate, go and search Jeremy Monga on Twitter. You will see some of the stuff that he was doing in the preseason game on Saturday. Now, I know it's weak opposition, but they're fully grown men that he's playing up against, and he is turning them inside and out. Now, of course, it was the Hungarian team. It was a Hungarian team, but they were big physical players, and he was turning them inside and out, being fouled left, right, and center. He, I think you've got to be careful. Of course, he's 16, and you've got to make sure he doesn't play too much and he doesn't pick up injuries. You have to protect him in a bubble. But I think it's going to be very difficult for this manager to not play him. I think he's just so good.
Even with Fatwa and Mavididi in the equation.
So yeah, when in the under-21s, the Premier League 2, so bear in mind, so when he was 15 years old, he was one of the best players in the under-21 league.
Jesus Christ.
He consistently took that
step up. Is that the PL2?
The PL2. He was turning people inside and out in the PL2 for fun. And obviously with Leicester performing so badly last season, he was, there was a reason to bring him through and give him a chance training with the first team, getting some minutes. And his debut, I think it was against Newcastle. He did well against Newcastle. I think his best game in the Premier League was against Nottingham Forest, where we drew that game and we stopped them getting Europa League, although it looks like they're going to get it again anyway. And he nearly scored in that game as well, but he was having a lot of joy in that game too. I think you've got to protect him, of course, but he's just that exciting. He's so physical as well already. Like he's 16, just turned 16. I don't think I'm even getting ahead of myself here, man. I honestly think he's that good. He is that good. Just keep an eye out from this season, because I think it's going to be magic.
Wow, I'm very excited now. Okay, that's brilliant. So in terms of and then obviously to cover out Abdul Fatawi, one thing I really like, he's got a lovely left foot on him, and he also has a really powerful shot on him as well, Abdul Fatawi. So looking forward to seeing him in the Championship again as well.
So he did his ACL in November, and I think when that happened, I think a lot of Leicester fans just thought, well, that's us done. That's us done this season. This just isn't our year. And because we got here, he was a hidden gem, as you call it. He was in the Sporting Lisbon B team at 18 years old. Leicester got him in the Championship, a loan with option to buy. I think the option was, I want to say it was £12 million. Of course, after the Championship title winning season, they activated that. And look, I think he's got a bright future ahead of him, as long as there's no reoccurrences, because you know what it's like when players get these ACL injuries. There's other things that can follow, which are horrible. It can really affect a career. But we're absolutely buzzing. So on Saturday, again in the same game against the Hungarian team, that was his first game back since November, and just like he left off. He was quick, he was exciting, he was cutting in on his left and firing shots there with his left onto the keeper. He only played 25 minutes of that, but there was a highlights package there just from 20 minutes of football in a preseason game. So he should be the starting right winger as long as his recovery and rehab is all going to plan, and he gets some more minutes between now and Sheffield Wednesday. So I expect him to be one of the better players in the division. If this is the worry, this is why I'm so desperate for us to get up this season, because there's an argument to be made by some people about take your time, build something so that next time you get promoted, you've got a better chance of staying up. But if we don't go up, we are going to lose some of these players. Abdul Fattah, I'm almost certain if we didn't go up, he would get picked up by another club. And in fact, I think if he hadn't have had his ACL, he probably wouldn't be a Leicester player right now. He probably would have been picked up by somebody else.
That makes a lot of sense. So then, if we move forward to the centre forward position, then
oh
you might
god,
have to refresh my memory of who you've got in attack, Locks.
Our only recognised striker is Patson Daka. We have Jordan Ayew, who I think, as it stands, I would probably imagine he starts as the striker. Patson Daka is an interesting player. I mentioned it earlier, but he was, he was highly rated when he was at Salzburg. He was playing, he was putting up similar numbers to Haaland at Salzburg. He was doing great things, and Leicester picked him up, and that was an exciting signing. But it's just never worked out for him. It's just never worked out. Now, some people would say that that's because of maybe Jamie Vardy. You come to Leicester City and you've got to outperform Vardy or you don't play. And Jamie Vardy, as we all know, no matter his age, he performs. He scores goals. So, of course, that's the problem. It was similar with Kelechi and Acho at Leicester. It never really worked out because of Jamie Vardy. But now you'd think, okay, there's potentially an opening here for him to have a fresh start. But with 1 year left on his deal, last time we were relegated, he almost left. He nearly went to Bournemouth, but that deal fell through at the last minute. He played, I think, 20 games for Leicester that season in the Championship.
I feel like you had 4 strikers. You had Jamie Vardy, Tom Cannon, Patson Daka in there. I think you had one more striker, but none
Kelechi
of them.
and Acho.
Oh, it wasn't Acho, right? Yeah.
In the last time, you mean, in the Championship? Last time in the
Championship, yeah. So, but none of them really racked up the big numbers, did they? And I think Daka couldn't really get himself really ahead of the. I think he had one game maybe against Rotherham where he scored a couple, but other than that, seemed to struggle to find form, didn't he?
Yeah, and one of the worst striking performances I've ever seen against Leeds United as well. In that season where he just couldn't hit a barn door. So it's interesting. I think Leicester fans would love we'd love to go out and sign a striker. Of course we would now with Jamie Vardy leaving. I've just got a feeling we might not. I mean, of course, the finances at the club aren't great. The PSR movement is poor. The leeway, so we're not going to be spending much money this summer. If we sold Mads Hermansen for 25-30 million, then you'd hope the club were able to bring in another striker. But as it stands for Sheffield Wednesday, I think the starting number 9 there will be Jordan Ayew. He seems to fit Marti CIfuentes' system better. He's better on the ball than Patson Daka. He's quite physical. He can put himself about as well. He wins a lot of fouls as well. That's his bread and butter. So I think that's who we'll see as it stands. Of course, Patson Daka, his contract won't be renewed. 1 year left. He'll probably leave on a free in 12 months unless somebody picks him up this summer, which I highly doubt.
So with that in mind then, Locks, how many more additions are you expecting? I suppose you've got, with the sanctions from the EFL and Premier League or whatever, it's kind of quite hard to bring in players in the same way that you did 2 years ago. But I'm wondering, are you expecting any further additions and outgoings as well?
I would probably expect free agents and loans, to be honest. We did that last time, of course. even though we spent money on like Mavadidi, Mads Hermansen, Harry Winks, Connor Cody, we brought in Callum Doyle on loan. We brought in Yunus Akgun from Galatasaray on loan. Abdul Fattah again was a loan with option to buy. So I think if we do see movement, that is what it will be. Again, of course, if we can bring in, let's say 45 million for for Hermansen and Bilal El Khanous, which is looking at it could be around that range, then that's different, right? I don't know the ins and outs. I don't know if we're going to get a transfer embargo or a business plan or any of this stuff.
It's mad how we still don't know, and it's like 2 weeks before the start of the season.
Well, I would say, 23rd of July, I would assume we've not got a transfer embargo. I would have thought we would know by now. That's what you'd think. But Leicester appeal stuff, and you don't hear stuff. You don't hear confirmation of these things until this So who knows what sanctions are currently on the club that aren't yet confirmed to the public? But I mean, if we can bring in a couple of free agents who are going to, positively impact the squad, not necessarily even just starters, but players that are going to improve the overall squad, then by all means do that. I mean, we've been linked with Max Lowe, which
Wednesday.
Yeah, it doesn't scream exciting, but
it's not the most thrilling acquisition in the world, would it? But
no, but if you could bring in a couple loans, then I think the squad is there to compete this year. So,
yeah. So with that in mind, then, Locks, do you think what's the expectation from the fan base? I suppose from the board's point of view as well. Is it a case of playoffs minimum in terms of the expectation?
Points deduction or not? Without a points deduction, I would say Leicester will finish top 2.
Oh, really?
In my opinion, yeah, I would be confident of that.
Okay,
but I am confident we are going to get a deduction. So, a points deduction. So, with a points deduction, anything over 10 points or anything over 6 or 7 points, I would say that probably rules out top 2. To be honest, just because it's going to be competitive. There's going to be a couple clubs up there with big points tallies, like there has been the last couple of seasons. So I would say playoffs. I think even, I don't know about you, mate, I'd be interested to hear what you think, but with a 12-point deduction, let's just say, because that's a number that's been thrown about quite a bit. I think Leicester would have no problems finishing in the playoffs. I mean, maybe I'm being overly optimistic. And if Leicester City are in the playoffs, of course, anyone can win that. That's fair enough. I would back Leicester to win the playoffs. So
interesting. So, I mean, I suppose if I was going through the 11 from the players that we've spoken about, if we're looking at who's good enough for a top 2 side, if we ignore the points deduction thing, I think Akoli, who you mentioned, Pereira, if you can find that full fitness. I would say probably Harry Winks. I would say Monga possibly now. Steffi Mavadidi. So I think you've got 4 or 5 players there who are probably at that kind of standard. But I think that there's a couple of things. Firstly, the delays to recruiting players has been a challenge, and also, maybe strengthening the squad in the way that you might need to. But also, I would say maybe the feel around the club with the criticism at some of those off-field figures and the atmosphere around the place. Whereas I look, my team, Birmingham City, we've got like a real unity around the place, and our fans love the ownership regime, and they've come in for a lot of praise. And I think there's more of a feel-good factor, and I think incrementally that kind of the feel can be quite important as well, even in ways that are difficult to kind of pin down. So that's my concern about Leicester City from a environment around the place.
I think that's fair. I think that's fair completely. That negative feeling around the club can really derail you, and that is a possibility. I would say Leicester fans are fickle, and if we won the first 3 games of the season, a negative feeling, it can turn into a positive quite quickly. Winning games breeds that, confidence, that positivity. There will be a core section of fans that will refuse to forget the failures, the previous failures, and they will still hold people at the club to account. But when you get into the stadium, if you've got a team there that are performing, that are trying, that are putting, a shift in, once you're, in that stadium, I think the positivity will be there. So yeah, I hope I'm right, of course. Again, I will stand by that if there was no deduction, I think we would get automatically promoted. Some people will say that's too optimistic, and that's fair enough. But I am more than confident with the current squad, and I think it's more than capable on the pitch to be one of the best teams in the division.
Great stuff. So some final quick fire questions from me then, Locks, before we finish off.
Yeah.
First one being, what's the biggest reason to believe in Leicester City right now?
The youth. We had, sorry, I know this needs to be quick. I'll be very quick. The training ground was built for this. The training ground, it's not an instant overnight success where you start seeing improvement straight away. It takes time. We've been in this training ground for 4 years nearly, I think it is. We're starting to see the fruits of that. Jerry Monger, and it's not just him. Jake Evans is another one. Lewis Page. You've got a couple of the ones who are slightly older. Will Alves, Ben Nelson. We are starting to see the youth come through at Leicester, and I think it's exciting. So, and they're going to make an impact.
Brilliant stuff. That's exciting. Biggest reason for doubt?
Points deductions, PSR concerns. Yeah, annoying the authorities like we have done previously. If that continues, then it's not great.
Prediction then, where are Leicester City get? So let's work in terms of point deductions. Let's work on the basis that Leicester City have a 8-point deduction.
8 points. Fourth in the league. Yeah, that's my.
There you go. Yeah. Brilliant stuff. Locks, it's a pleasure to have you on making your EFL debate debut. So thanks so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. What are the plans for the Blue Tinted Glasses podcast over the course of the season?
Yep. So yeah, we're Leicester City fan channel. Lots of different contributors that do all sorts of different videos, watch alongs, match previews, match reviews, match analysis, other bits and bobs with other creators as well in the league. So yeah, lots of content on Blue Tinted Glasses coming up. So yeah.
Lovely stuff. Everyone go and get subscribed. Locks, thanks so much for joining us. Pleasure to get your insight. You can also subscribe to us on at EFL Debate on YouTube and on Spotify for more EFL content over the course of the season. And we'll see you again for another Summer Deep Dive very soon.